It is time to continue on with the review of The War Between the Land and the Sea, Part 4, The Witch of the Waterfall. And I'm beginning to question, where on earth is the war and why do we have bestiality in this when it is illegal in the UK? Is this an issue that we need to talk about? Hello and welcome back to Chat About It, Don't Shout About It with me, Rachel, the Queen of the Woke, as crowned by one of my haters.
I crown you Queen of the Woke!
Let's chat about it. Please let me know what you think of part 4 in the comments section below. Was it great? Was it bad? And what do you want to see in the future with regards to Doctor Who itself? Please, of course, do remember that it is okay to like the story and not like the story. That's absolutely 100% important. Please do keep it friendly in the chat with each other as well. The Witch of the Waterfall was written by Pete McTighe, and it's the next installment of The War Between the Land and the Sea. It continues on from where Ted exploded. I'm going to say it loosely because it's more likely an implosion, from where the world imploded under the sea. We see a good chunk of the Sea Devils taken out and the diplomats with them, which doesn't make any sense because the Sea Devils can actually withstand that, okay? But all except for Barclay, who is saved by Salt. She gives him the kiss of life. Logistics wise, his lungs would have been crushed, but hey ho, forget that, too close to reality that would be. Salt is taken as a prisoner of war, even though there is no war currently. We discover in a massive information dump that Ted was part of a mission, as was the assassin who tried to off Kate. He was part of La Clemente. Sorry if I pronounced that wrong. La Clemente is an institute that was founded and supported by billionaires who are terrified that the Sea Devils are taking over and replacing the human race. Sir Keith is linked to the institute. He is taken out. Barclay also rescues Salt from her prison by reversing the lorry that she is strapped to backwards, and she lands in the water and somehow manages to escape out of this metal tank. And they obviously then dive into the world of bestiality whilst everyone is looking for them. Kate ends up speaking to the Sea Devils herself. She meets a new Sea Devil called Tide, who says that Salt needs to be returned or else they will use the water in the air to turn the metal around them to rust, then dust. Later, Barclay suggests that they make their way to North Wales, where Salt could live in the waterfalls, as she is now unable to return to her kind for saving a human. She says they would know that she is in the water. So Barclay plans an escape and asks his ex-wife to help Unit go with her as a trap, but she shouts it to Barclay at the meeting place. However, they end up cornered by Unit, who want to recapture Salt, and the army, who want her off. Kate orders Unit to turn weapons on the army to get ready to fire, and vice versa. However, Salt releases this sonic screech of some description and escapes when Barclay tells her to, which makes absolutely no sense. If she can screech like that, then why why have they not dealt with the human race with just screeching? I do have positives about this part, but I feel the need to address the biggest elephant in the room here, the dive into bestiality. Okay, look, I know this is not real before people say, oh, it's just a story. I know. It's a story about a corrupt government, capitalism, pollution, and all of these other things and ideologies. And these are very close to home, very real, everyday issues that we have in our entertainment for some reason, and they feel that they need to address. But why on earth are we diving into bestiality? First of all, that's illegal here in the UK. Is this something that people want to seek as having as a normality? If it was, then I wasn't aware that people wanted to normalize it. Secondly, I'm not entirely sure that I want it in a spin off for Doctor Who or even Doctor Who itself. Yes, I know we have Madame Vastra and Jenny. However, it was still illegal in the Victorian times. It was called buggery. And whilst it's still there, it's nowhere near as major as this. And thirdly, there will be people out there who will find it oddly voyeuristic. Let's just put it like that. Now, the love story I saw coming. The random dive into bestiality implications was quite vulgar. I'm wondering if this is why they decided to humanize her appearance. If she looks more human, then it doesn't matter, right? I don't think so. The moment bestiality happened, the moment this program goes up in the terms of age suitability, I can't wait to see what this age restriction is when it is released for buying. I can tell you. I don't need I don't get the need to dive into things like this. A show that is for sci fi and historical purposes dives into ideologies and politics, and now the acts of law breaking because technically Barclay has now broken the law more than once. I think this is also why they introduced us to a female sea devil. Their intentions were that she was going to be the reason for the war to break out. It wasn't going to be about pollution in the end, I don't think. That was a talking point thrown in for the main part of the story in order to get the sea devils there in the first place. It doesn't look like they are appearing to follow through given the massive reset and the continuity. There is rubbish on the ground, but not to the extent of the amount of rubbish that they had turfed out and you saw in the very beginning. That's really a shame, though, that because that plot point now leads to like a contrivance, it should have been followed through on. If you start with it, then you've got to keep it consistent and don't suddenly switch the story sort of middle of part three into part four before the finale. I like the idea, sorry, that Barclay saves her. I think that was always going to happen once she had saved him, a favour for a favour, except he followed through with more than just a favour. I would have much rather seen Salt save Barclay to keep talks open, to be honest with you, but then return to the Sea Devils, right? And then Barclay saves her much later in return. For example, the finale. That being said, the newest Sea Devil to join the series is another one that looks to be more human-like. That character is Tide, and I immediately like him more than I like Salt. I couldn't give a massive impression on Salt to begin with, and now I feel like she is more of a plot device rather than a well fleshed out character. That's partly to do with the slow slat up that RTD has done in part one. Tide is instantly more likable because he is acting the way that I would expect him to react. That's because Pete McTighe writes men better as well. Plus, not only that, I think the Sea Devils work better as male characters. Yes, I am saying that as a woman, but my preference for the Sea Devils is male. Tide's voice is quite deep, it's quite charismatic, and that's also with regards to the actor in that everything he says and does is threatening without making as much effort compared to Salt. I felt Gugu was making a bit more effort. I think this plays also into the understanding of the role a bit more. Samuel Oatley is the actor's name. I've seen him in other bits and things. You know, he doesn't have a big TV career. He's more on the stage, more so. He works with the Royal Shakespeare Company, which may give him a more charismatic approach. I don't know. But there was something about Shakespearean about his performance. Not that the Sea Devils are Shakespearean, of course, but I think he has full grasp on the character and the purpose of his character, which was getting that female Sea Devil, fishy lady, back to them because she has committed something that was against their laws. The little speech that he gives is good enough to establish him as a character. However, this also should have happened earlier. This is one of the biggest issues that Pete McTighe has faced. The slow start and the introduction to Salt waylays a lot of what could have happened in part two. The war really should have started sort of beginning of part three, maybe middle of part three, with Tide coming in at that point and issuing the war status on the human race. Tide coming in. Sorry, no pun intended. Sorry. Okay. At that point, to announce the war on the human race, as I was saying, and we slowly see the decay through rust and dust. That would have been a lot better because the dilemma now that they are faced with is squeezing and condensing down a battle between UNIT and the Sea Devils that will be near on impossible. And RTD has written the next part, and if it is 44 minutes or so, then we are only going to get about 25 minutes dedicated to said battle and the rest to family. It might actually be longer though. Don't quote me on that. I don't really know at this point, and to be honest, I don't care. That says a lot. I'm kind of beyond caring, but I need to see the resolution to see it through. Hopefully, Pete has written it, but I don't think he has. And I hopefully, every minute is used, even if RTD has written it to the battle. How's that for optimism? I tried, right? I did try, I swear. Now, unfortunately, this part has a massive information dump in this, and I think that's safe to say that's because of pacing once again. It isn't unusual for information dumps, but information when it comes to the storytelling ordinarily should be more spread out. The information about the assassin Ted and the capitalist corporate greed billionaire company supported think tank La Clemente. There was one big scene alone that was dedicated to it. It needed to be broken down. It was just, here you go. Here is one of the most important piece of information that is integral to the plot in one go. Hi, here you go. I feel like this was supposed to have been a reasonably big reveal, but because bestiality was a focus, this got sidelined into what, I don't know, 4 or 5 minutes max. I also think it would be good because they mentioned the Sea Devils taking over and attempting to replace the human race. If we could see that in action in the next part. But I'm not trying to write the plot for them, and I don't expect anything more. And really, I should not be trying to fill in the brain and the gaps with the plot story. There's so much that is going to need to happen in this finale to make this rate highly right now, because it's not even broaching above mid for me personally. Of course, there are good things, and I had to search for those good things, but there are good things about it. For example, the opening follows immediately through with the cliffhanger, because that cliffhanger, to be quite frank, is the best cliffhanger that we've had. I think this is where they needed to start to space it out and make us sort of wait. The cliffhanger was reasonably good, and that really should have been used to get people talking. Sorry, but what I mean by spacing it out to make us wait was that part 4 should have been shown next week in order to get people talking. But because it was back to back, and the previous episode in itself was quite mundane, there would have been lack of enthusiasm for sure in order to bring them back. However, once again, we do get to see where the Disney money has been used. We see the underwater explosion. I don't really know what it was at the end of the day, and the effects for that were really good. Then we see Salt rushing Barkley to the surface, even though his lungs should have actually imploded on themselves. And I quite like that, although the kiss of life leads to a very bizarre conversation later on about her lips and how they felt. And this week's main cliffhanger is okay, except I think that Kate's actions were more than just a bit rash. Her father wouldn't have approved of this. Her father would have found some way of stopping the army because he has a great respect for the forces. Normally, Kate, I would have, in the beginning, would have been the same. I just don't think that Kate's writing is up to par. Why would she have turned ready to open fire on military men and risk outright civil war in the country? Why would she do that? Unless it is an allegory, a real one this time, to the infighting that we get within our own country. I don't know what he was trying to go for here. Overall, this one is an odd part to the story. I'm shocked by the bestiality, and not for the right reasons, and how that managed to get signed off on. I just will never know. What are they thinking? Come on, what are they thinking? Anyway, let's see what you think about this. So, Sadako says, the first 2 episodes were okay, but very drawn out and one trick. With the latest episode, it began to fall apart for me by making it so political and trying to reach for real-world parallels. It makes leaps of implausibility or more glaring. Quite simply, when our real world UK government is as weak and capitulating as it is, it just becomes impossible to buy that they would risk all-out war with an unknown superpower like the Sea Devils. That's fair. The Barclay Salt dynamic was far more interesting before it went in the needless romantic route, I agree, and having offed much of the cast in one go, I find my investment has slowly dwindled. For some reason, I am far less interested for Part 5's conclusion now than I was prior. I strongly sense RTD wrote this to correct for how horrible a waste of Warriors of the Deep was, and on that score he succeeded, but beyond the whole thing feels not very timely. I can't help think this concept might have felt far more exciting and potent back in 2007. Yeah, The Warriors of the Deep is probably one of my least favourite stories from classic era in particular. It's probably my least favourite for Peter Davison. And I also agree that Barclay and Salt was a far more interesting plot line than before the bestiality romance. I'm probably going to get demonetized for this video. I really am. I would agree about the real world parallels. It just hits way too close to home, and the biggest issue with the show overall and Doctor Who. It's drawing on real life way too much. If people want that, then that's what the soaps are for. All right? And I stand by that to this day. I've said it multiple times. Astro King says, changing into a thriller, two lovers on the run, that was unexpected. Fair enough, you didn't see that coming. My question is to you now, though. What do you like about that aspect of the story? The Wicked Fanboy says, great idea, bad execution. I was bored. They've trashed Doctor Who and the legacy of the show. They need to give it a rest for about a decade. The BBC sucks. Cheers. Well, you're welcome, The Wicked Fanboy. This is also another thing that I have said in the past about Doctor Who. Great ideas, bad execution, not so great. I do agree with that. Now, North says, Episode 3, I was getting bored and knew the globe gift was going to be a weapon. It was that obvious. Then Episode 4, I was expecting all hell to kick off and a massive with invasion fleets, explosions, etc., especially when the humans have just committed a hostile terrorist attack and in the underwater home base. I agree, actually. I didn't think about that. Nope, just bestiality, more empty threats from the human-faced fish people, and found myself scratching my head at this point as all hell should be kicking off. I love a slow burn story, but normally the penultimate episode should be all about madness and threat. I just hope RTD didn't write the last episode, as we know he has with his track record for finales. Unit didn't need to even be in the story, as they don't do much and are swept aside by the government and made to look utterly pointless. I do agree with that. And I got a feeling it will end like Warriors of the Deep. Gosh, I hope not. But instead of gas, it will be a DNA biological weapon that will affect the sea people only, seeing they stole a sample from the eggs. Do you reckon they might be cultivating that? I mean, it wouldn't surprise me at all. Now, I just want to point out that I write my reviews first, always. I wasn't aware if anyone else had picked up on bestiality until I read this comment. So I'm not alone. That's good. I'm not alone. I will say I was hoping as well for all hell to kick off because of the attack on home turf. But oh well, it didn't. It really, really didn't. And now he's got to consolidate it into one part. That's what I think. That's what you think as well for those comments. But let me know what you think if your comment isn't featured. Do check out some of the other content I have picked out for you. Thank you very much for watching. Chat about it. Don't shout about it. I will see you next time. Bye bye. Thank you for watching today. Don't forget you can join me on my other platforms as well. I've got YouTube, Rumble, Spotify, X, TikTok, Instagram, Locals, Substack, and I also have a Discord. Everything is linked below.